Time for us to begin this morning. That's how it is, right? That's how it is. All right, good morning. Good to have you here this morning. If you're not aware, we have a guest speaker for Bible class this morning and for our sermon this morning. So I'll briefly introduce him in just a moment, and then he will have our class. I do want to mention a couple of things before we start. Please pray for the Withams. Ron has been moved into a rehabilitation facility, so he went from ICU to a regular room and now is at rehabilitation. So we're grateful for his progression. Gloria's had some challenges with the stress, so please pray for her as well as she's dealing with that. And are there any other announcements? I feel like I'm forgetting somebody that I need to make mention of, but is there anything else that we need to mention before I have the introduction and we have our opening prayer? All right. So let's go ahead and have our opening prayer, and then I'll introduce our speaker for class this morning, and we'll get moving right into class. Let's go ahead and bow together. God, we're again grateful and we're thankful for the many opportunities you give us to come together and to worship and serve you, and we're grateful for this opportunity we have to hear about your work in other parts of the world and to study and from your word and be able to make application in our lives. Bless us, Father, in our efforts to learn from the things that have been prepared this morning. Help us to take those things, not just leave them here in the building, but take them out into the world and make us better suited to serve you in our capacity as your children and as Christians. Be with us, Father. Forgive us when we sin. We ask, Father, that you be with the Withams right now. We are grateful for Ron's progression. We pray you continue to bless him and be with him. Help him as he regains his strength and health. We pray you be with the medical staff that are caring for him and helping him to rehabilitate. And please be with Gloria and keep her strong. Help us to be an encouragement for her. We pray and offer these things in Jesus' name. Amen. So our guest speaker this morning is a little new to the work. I say that jokingly because he's been doing it for longer than I have been alive, which isn't saying much for some of us. I'm sure I know you call me kid from time to time. Just remember my grandkids call me Papa, so I'm not a newbie. But let me introduce to you Malcom Parsley. Many of you may be familiar with him as he has been here before, and we have supported his work in Korea for some time. Malcom is married to Kwiwa, who is also here with us. He's been in North Korea, in Korea since 1960, working in the missionary field. He's a graduate of Harding University with 2 master's degree and also has a PhD in Bible from a Bible college. And so he's going to speak to us this morning a little bit about the work that he's performing in which we support there in Korea, and also teach us our Bible class. And then in our worship service this morning, I will have again a brief introduction before he begins his sermon this morning. But let me take no more of his time and introduce Malcom Parsley.
The Lord is good. You know that? The Lord is really good. He loves his children. He takes care of us wherever we are. He's been nothing but a blessing to me all of my years in Korea. There have been many situations, and I've had a lot of problems. But my philosophy about problems is that they've all come, they've all gone. And so therefore, the next one that's on the way, it too is going to have an end afterwards, so I just don't worry too much about those. I used to, but I don't anymore. No, the Lord's taking care of all. Well, I'm very thankful, yes, very thankful to be here this morning speaking to y'all. And I'm most appreciative to you as a congregation as well as the elders. And I want to speak to the congregation too and say the same thing this morning at worship service. But I'm so thankful because Boyd Gilliland, who I understand started this congregation many years ago, was a dear friend of ours. He was our preacher when I was in high school in San Diego. And so we were dear friends. In fact, I just got an email from Lunell the other day. So I've had a connection here for a long time, and then y'all taking the sponsorship, and I'm so thankful to God for that. That nearly came about once before, as I understood it, but it didn't. So I'm that glad now the Lord has seen fit to bring us together, and I hope that we can work together many, many years. The work in Korea is like all mission works. If you're a smart missionary, you never do anything for the right now, nearly. It's always, how is this going to affect the future? And missionaries who go to fields for 2 years, where they're concerned about their 2 years in the field. Those who go for just a few weeks, well, they're concerned about their few weeks in the field. Well, if you're going to spend a long time at it, your different ideas about it are much different, because you know that your whole life is involved in this, and you know that the end results is what you're building right now. And so it takes a lot of prayer and it takes a lot of concern. So I've enjoyed my years in Korea. It's been a lot of difference. For those of you who have not heard me about going there, I went there in 54 and 55 as an Air Force person. And I wrote my mother back after I got there, and I tried everything. I'm not going to go into that now, but I tried everything to not go to Korea. But I ended there anyway. And I wrote my mother back, and I said, Mother, I hate this place. They don't think like I think. They don't look like I look. They don't talk like I talk. They don't eat what I eat. And I even mentioned they didn't smell like I smell because they had only kimchi to eat then, which was the fermented kimchi. And they used a lot of garlic back then because that's the only food they had. And there were no paved roads except in Seoul. And we joked about the potholes that you rode down into and then out of them. That's about the truth of the situation. They were pretty bad. But before I left there, I made an agreement with the Father that if he would take me back and educate me, give me what I needed, that I'd spend the rest of my life. And he's blessed me so far in that, and I'm still there, and he's still giving me a few years. I really don't want another 90 to live on this earth. But I do feel I've got another, maybe I hope, maybe 10, because I'm really hoping to see another generation come along and to have then great-grandchildren in Christ over there. It's always makes me feel good now. I can see the children of the ones that I baptized many years ago that are coming along in the church and growing, and the church is developing, and it makes me feel real good. The mission work is always, as I was saying a minute ago, headed towards a independence. That's what you're after, is to where you're bringing them Christ and you're putting the Christ in their hearts. And what you are is what they're going to become. You have to always keep that in mind. And so you try your best to set an example in spirituality and holiness, in demeanor, and the things you don't do. It's talking about living in a glass house, you really do. Everybody looks to the missionary, and even small mistakes are about this big. But we've been there and gone through a lot of problems. And I don't know if any of you knew my mother or not. I think she was here a time or two, a long time ago. But she and Boyd were all good friends back then. But it's been not an easy road, because when we got there, there was no halfway exchanging our food from American food one day to Korean food the next day. And there wasn't much food there. In fact, there was no American food. And they just started eating beef Before that, they'd hardly they ate no beef, basically, except when a cow died, an ox, and then they would have it. But it was vegetables. But I learned to eat a lot of vegetables. Dandelions, before they bloom, are real good, by the way. And the garlic stems, I like the garlic stems a lot better than the garlic, but because it's really good. You put a little hot sauce on those, and they taste real well. When grew up in San Diego, La Jolla. I graduated from La Jolla High, and I remember the first time I heard the Japanese ate squid. I thought, what? What cannibalistic people, would want to eat squid and octopus and things like that? Well, I'm one of them. So, you learn to eat things. I've taught this in missions. I teach how to learn to like things, and the basic key is you just take a little bit of it. I'm still learning to like oysters, by the way. My mother loved oysters, and I just don't have a mutuality. But you'll take just a slight little drop on your tongue, always to the point, never where it becomes negative to you. Never where it becomes negative. And then 2 drops, and then 3 drops. Your system gets used to it, and you pray about it, and you try, and you can get to where you can just eat about anything. I love fried grasshoppers. John the Baptist really had something going, let me tell you. I'm serious about that. You dip fried grasshoppers in honey, that is really good. It's real crisp. Remember the first time that I saw them, they didn't have motels back then, the 60s now, and so you stayed at the Buddha temple, and that custom goes way back, it's hundreds and maybe a couple thousand years. But we were staying in the Buddha temple, visiting the churches around, and the morning we got up, and for breakfast they had these little brown things about this long, real crisp, real good, nutty flavored. I like that. And so I asked the guy that was with me, my interpreter, I said, what is this? And he got his dictionary down. I just picked one up to put in my mouth, and he said, grasshopper. I thought, now, Malcolm, you like this before he told you that. I said, there's no reason why you can't continue to eat this. And so I ate another one and another one. The third one I'm kind of giving it this, But from then on, I really liked them. And then I got married, and that was one of the great blessings of being married to my wife. She's sitting back over here, by the way, with a maroon dress on. Was that her mother would have the kids. She'd pay the kids to go catch the grasshoppers, and then she'd put them in the freezer. This was in the 70s and 80s. And put them in a sack and give them to us, and we'd take home and put in the freezer, and my wife would fry them for me from time to time. So it's very beneficial to have a Korean wife. But she's been a great help to me, a great help naturally, and being a real good cook and American food as well as Korean. You can see my mother always wanted me to be an outstanding preacher, and when a guy said to me the other day, I think you misunderstood Mr. Outstanding, but anyway, we won't go into that. But let's get back to the mission work there, doing the work. So the work you do, you always try to plan it for the future. What's this going to be like 10 years from now, 15 years from now? When you're gone, is this really going to be what's needed? What's needed now for the future? That's the key. And so the programs we start are all headed to that. Now, we started out, when I got there were 5 of us missionaries, and we worked very hard with Christian University. And I was head of the Bible department for 20-some-odd years. And the school grew and grew and grew, but then in about 15 years, all 4 of them left, all together, and I was left. Well, we've had 2 or 3 since then to come to Korea, but again, they've only been there, well, one of them was there 9 years. So it's been kind of a lonely road to the extent that it's been basically just me. But at the same time, it's given me an opportunity to grow close, because nearly all the preachers that we've developed, you see, I know real well. The ones that we developed out of the past. They were my students. They are now, one of them is now on the board of the university. My office is at the university. I'm not affiliated with the university in any way now because the government has a regulation at the age of 70, I believe it is, you cannot have teachers tenured. So I had to, after I was teaching graduate school, but we had built it up to where we had 7 departments and 3 or 4, I think, graduate departments. And so I was working naturally in the Bible department. And this was great and going along fine, but then we had a problem with some, well, we call it tea rooming, where you go and sit down with a person and convince them to go your way, and then you all get together at a board meeting, and then everything's taken off this way. And it got at one point to where the individuals who didn't have the same goals as we had of building a school for Christ, and they wanted to build a big school, big university, were able to get the vote in, so that's kind of the way the school has gone. But still, preachers, we've got many very fine, dedicated Christians, and I'm so thankful that I've had a part in helping develop them. We had, when I got there, when I first got there in '54 in the Air Force, I think we had about 6 churches. Korean, by the way, started the first churches of Christ in Korea in 1930. But then the war came, and they were all up north. There were 7 churches they had started, and they all came south, and they started another church. So when I got there in '60, I think we had 12 churches, and now we have 125. So the Lord has blessed us well. And some of these individuals are just, totally dedicated to God. They're sacrificing and working hard and trying to get things done. And we're trying to work with them to do that too. So we're trying to get many things started, and we have in the past. I worked and got a lectureship started, the first lectureship, and it was going along real well. And then, again, some of this tea rooming got going on, and they decided, well, they wanted to invite, rather than me invite the ones lectureship from the States come over, they wanted to handle that. And I said, well, that's fine. It's good for you to take over that. But then they began to get some liberals invited over. And so that went off the wrong direction, and it went out, and it kind of just feathered out into nothing land to where they stopped. But been working on that again to get a lectureship started. And this was going along very well until COVID came. Also, we had Brother, what is his name? The head of Gospel Advocate. Anyway, he came over. I got him to come over, and he came over really enthused about the work. In fact, he raised a lot of funds for our first youth camp in Korea. And so, and I was really excited about that. So I worked with him in that. And we had plans for the next year, and then COVID came. So we haven't gone any further, but he still has it in his heart, and I'm still planning to work with him. And so when this settles down, hopes it will, then we're going to go back into starting some more camp work. We have had also the Preachers' Fellowship, we call it, where the preachers who wish to, we have a 4-day, 5-day fellowship to where we gather together and we discuss the church and what we can do to help it to grow and the problems that it has and how to overcome them and things like that. And I used to be there and always a part of it and such as that. But I've got them now to where they've got charge of that. And they're doing a wonderful job. That's what makes me happy. Even though I didn't attend this last time, I heard real good things. And they were so gracious and phoning and letting me know how things were going. And they all took a lot of pictures and, waving and such as that. So that's coming along real well. And then we're the only ones. I've always been in the tract ministry. And really believed in tracts and the written tracts. But just like everything else, everything evolves. In the 60s, you make a tract and hand it to a person. That's a prized possession back then. they would loan it to friends, but they'd want it back. And you could give them tracts, and you would never see one thrown away, never. If anybody found one, that was a jewel which they kept, and they would share with their people. Well, it's gotten now to where the country is so materialistic that they won't even accept tracts. But we found other ways. We've got a tract now we call our smart tracts. We've just started. And we developed this tract because we've talked to the preachers. What can we do, you see, to get people to listen to the gospel and to get them connected with the church? And as we talked together, it was a matter of using the modern day facilities and methods. And so we developed what we call a smart tract. It's a tract that's real nice looking. I regret that I didn't bring it this morning. I really meant to. But it's a real nice looking tract. It looks as good as any you will see in the Brotherhood here. That we're responsible for printing, by the way, all the printing work. Nobody hardly in Korea is doing any printing work except us. And I say us. I'm in charge of the Church of Christ Mission. This is a nonprofit organization set up many years ago for the missionaries to be a part of. My wife and I are the only members now. But it's a government-authorized organization which gives you permission to be free of tax and such as that. And so we've got this set up. And so we are the ones under this mission that do the printing. And we can't sell anything. But that's good. That's good. We give it away. But and I'll get to that in a minute. But this smart tract, we have it in a nice form. But also, if you want to read to you, you can go on your phone, and we've got it to where you can listen to it. Well, this is going over very well because you can take about 2 or 3 minutes to read the tract. It's folded, usually once or twice, large print, where easy to read, no problem on that, even in a bus or a subway. And it's going along very well. In fact, so well that one of our preachers himself has bought. Again, we don't sell, contributed the cost of printing for 8,000 of these that he himself has handed out. And other churches are beginning to do this. And concerning that, you see, that's our goal also. As a missionary, well, you raise the funds and you print the tracts and you hand out the tracts, and that's what your job is. And you do that. Then you have to phase in somewhere to get the churches to where they will order them. They will pay for them, you see. That's not an easy thing to do. That was one of our great difficulties. But we have now, or we're receiving now, several $100s every month from them for the printing. Well, naturally, that fund goes off by itself, and we do the printing out of that fund rather than out of my work fund. And that makes it very nice for us as well as for them. But they're beginning to take this responsibility, you see. And so it's like the lectureship and like the youth programs that we're going to have. We had one Korean preacher a long time ago. He had been to the States to study, and he came back to Korea, and he did a wonderful job of the Christian ladies lectureship. And that was really needed in Korea because in Korea, the ladies have a lot of influence in the church, a lot more so than in America. And so he would have the lectureships, and it was going along real well, and then he had some health problems, and he was never able to come back again. So it wasn't to the point to where it would take care of itself, and I was not brought into it to carry it on. So it just kind of petered out, we say. But the works that we get them to where the Koreans get involved. At first, they stand back. Well, that's the missionary's job. I don't want to interfere with that. That's the attitude. And so you say, well, come help. Well, what do you want to do? What do you think, Brother Parsley, And the same thing with the churches when you start a congregation. Well, you have to, what do you think we should do, Well, I don't know, Brother Parsley, what do you think? In other words, we'll agree with you. Whatever you say, we'll agree with you. Well, that's not what you want. That's not taking responsibility. And so you're always pushing, trying to give a responsibility. And one of the congregations I'm working with now, I work 2 congregations. One of them, we had elders at one time, good elders, except one, that was me. But we had good elders. And then one moved to the States, and while we were in the States one time, this is one of the problems. I'm giving you the problem as well as the good points. The congregation members wanted to do something, which was a good project, but the one elder that was left there in the church while I was in the States, he said, no, I want to wait till the Parsley gets back. Well, some of the church members said, no, we want to go do this by ourselves. It was to do some benevolent work. And so they did it by themselves. Well, he was offended. He felt that was going against his request of waiting until Brother Parsley got back, so he resigned. So that dissolved the eldership. We haven't had an eldership since then, but we keep on looking, we keep on working at it in that congregation. But then the other congregation I'm working with, I guess I can go ahead and get into that. Well, let's just stick with that one. That congregation, the Lord started through me in 83 or 84. And it's a fine congregation. We're family. We were at one time we were in the 80s, and then we fell back because we had to move, forced move. We didn't own the building. And then it dropped down into the 40s, and then COVID came. We dropped down into the 20s and below, and now it's building back up. Nearly everybody is back except the elderly and the ones with children. Koreans are very health conscious, very health conscious. In fact, that whole nation wears a mask. Just you sneeze and they'll look at you. So but it's a family congregation. It really is. We can go into anybody's house and visit any time, and we just welcome as a part of the family. We have congregation has potluck. We did have it again before COVID every Sunday, and it went along real well. But the COVID came. The government said, no, you can't have potlucks. You can't have Bible classes. And so it was 2 or 3 weeks there we couldn't have worship. And so that was, that always hurts. And but that now is kind of past, and they're beginning to accept it like every place else. It's just we're just got to live with it. And so now we're getting back in. My wife works with the ladies in that congregation, does a wonderful job. They all, again, love each other. We don't have any frictions within the congregation. So many congregations have got a lot of division, my group and your group. Korean is more groupish than America is that way. They want something done, well, they go talk privately against some more tea rooming and say, well, why don't we do this? We can do this. We can get this pushed, And so the other group says, no, we shouldn't do that. And well, we don't have that. We're very thankful for that. We've been able to avoid that. So we've remained strong and faithful. I'll tell you the story behind that. I have started the Lord. I'm sorry, the story, Father. The Father has, through me, started about close to 50 churches. They're not all alive. When you start a church and turn it over to Korean, they're not always qualified because they don't have experience. This is a nation where there were no preachers, hardly any churches when we got there. And so you don't have those that grew up in the church to know the Bible real well, and you can't give them a pill or a shot that will put a lot of knowledge of the Bible in them. That comes with time and experience and a lot of Bible reading and praying. Well, you can't make something like that. You can't generate it. It has to come with time. And so we would put preachers in there that were the best we had and the best we could get, but they still proved to be unqualified to carry on in building a congregation. So the congregations would die. So some of them have died. But we have the ones that live. I'm glad to say that most of them, or many of them, are very faithful to the Lord. But this congregation, the Kongnam congregation, we back, I don't know, 20 years ago, I guess. It's 40 some odd years old now. But about 20 years ago, I was past time turning it over to, I started the churches. I stayed with it for a few years and turned over preacher and such as that. But this I want to stay with it to make sure. So we had elders, as I said, and then that fell apart. So now I had to kind of start again, and I want to make sure we get some more elders. But things came in, it hadn't worked out that way. But I was determined that I was going to turn over to the Koreans. And I knew it was past time because I had so many jobs that I was doing. I couldn't go, we say beat the bushes, go around and do visitation and talk to people and store to store and hand out tracts. I couldn't do that. I was head of the Bible department. I was head of the college library for 20 years. And I had other jobs in the college as well. And plus I was always working with the congregation. But this congregation, I told them, I said, I'm going to find a preacher, and we're going to change preachers, but you need somebody who can build this church by going out and visiting and such as that. So I brought a person in and said, oh, well, Brother Parsley, no, he's too young. Oh. So I found another preacher. They're not easy to find, but I found another preacher. And I brought him in. Oh, Brother Parsley, no, he's too old. He's too old. So I said, well, all right. So I found another preacher. Well, he's from this province down there, too country. He sounds too, you got too much of a brogue, okay? And this is soul. This is soul. So I said, okay. Well, I tried another one, and I tried another one. That's all there were to try. And so I told him, I said, well, you've got to find a preacher. I'm leaving. I said, next Sunday is my last Sunday. Next Sunday I got up. I told him it was my last Sunday. I preached my sermon, left, went home. One of the deacons called. Brother Malcom. Yeah? I just want to let you know that after you left today, we had a meeting. I said, well, good, great. What was the decision? Well, we took a vote, and 85% of the congregation said, wherever you go, they're going to go. But that doesn't work. It doesn't even leave enough money to finance paying for the rent of the building, you see, that we had, and the utilities, and a preacher. Oh, I thought, And so I prayed much more about that. Well, it ended up that I stayed, and because I didn't have really the time. I had so many things. The other missionaries had left. I had so many things that had been pushed back on me. One missionary left and left the congregation, said, Brother Parsley, will you take care of this congregation, finish developing it? I was trying to take care of 2 congregations already myself. So I told him, I can't. I said, we can combine them, if we get them to go, but some naturally, because of distance, didn't come. And we regretted that. But that's another one of the points of mission work. You don't want to start something you can't finish. I mean, it would be like a woman saying, well, I'm going to start supper, but I know I'm not going to have it at 6 o'clock. We're going to eat at 6 o'clock anyway. You don't want that. So I've been staying with it, but it's doing a good job. But that's some of the problems that you have. But then the other congregation I'm working, now I don't know, am I supposed to quit this morning? What time? How much time do I have? Oh. You'll hear about it? Okay, I'll hear about it. All right, yeah. Paul, preached till midnight. I have no idea how he did that. I've never preached that short of a sermon in my life. All right. But the other congregation I'm working with was a military congregation. It was started by the military back in the 50s, about 57 or 58, after I had left Korea and gone on. Some of the military got together and started a congregation there on base. And it developed, and at one time we had, I think we had one time there were over 100 in that congregation. But then when I attended there quite frequently. When I first got there, I was going to the military bases as well. At one time, I was going to 5 military bases on every Sunday. We would set their time, one at 9 o'clock and one at 11 and one and such as this, time for the worship, and then I'd have to go to the next base and have another time. So my Sundays were pretty full. But then I got to working more with the Korean congregation, and so that changed that. But anyway, the military congregation, the preacher that they had there left, and so they asked me to come, and I said, well, all right. So I went, and they bought some property right off base, and so this was great too. They wanted me to help to get settled. Well, they did. They moved off base because they wanted to get Koreans also to come attending, and they wouldn't have to sign them on the base. And this was great because if it was off the base, then there's more of their congregation. But still, it was a number. Well, the number of military was beginning to decrease. The government had said, American government had said, we're going to take more and more away from Korea. And so that number went down. And but we were still there. It was some nice property. It's still nice property. A Korean congregation has it. They're a little more liberal than I wish they were. But it's still a Church of Christ there. But that congregation was started. And then we moved from there over to the largest, let's see, picture or not? Carol, did we get that? You get that picture of the church building? Oh, never mind. No, that's all right. I don't. But anyway, the church building is a nice brick building. There's a Korean congregation there. And they graciously allowed us to use their building for the afternoon worship. Well, this went along real well until they decided to move the base. Well, this was the big military base in Korea for the U.S. Army. They moved it all down south, and they discontinued all the small bases, nearly all of them, all over the country, and they put it in one place down south. And so we didn't have any more military attending except one family, and they're still faithfully attending. She works for the military. She was not military. But this number, and the only ones left now were the Koreans that worship there. So we went from about 40 some odd down to, again, a little less than 20. In fact, it went down during the COVID situation because they couldn't attend any facilities off base. So we went down one Sunday to 6. But we built it back up, and more Koreans have come, and we've had more Americans come over, young Americans, members of the church, who teach English, and so they're attending, and so we've got a place for them, and that's good too. And some of them are working very well. I didn't mention this. Let me jump back here. This is kind of the first place on tour that I'm talking about this, the second place, really. But I keep thinking things I should have said. But this congregation where I was talking about the first one there, even though I stayed and I'm still there, I counted the other day, and we have, I think, 25 preachers that have come out of that congregation. So me staying has been, even though I wanted to leave, good results have still continued to come out of that congregation. Okay, now back to this new congregation, the Hyochang congregation, Hyochang-dong. There's a big stadium there. It's the reason it's a park area, and it's right across the street from the park. But this just left us with the Koreans. Okay, fine. So we began to work with the Koreans, and now we've got 3 in there. One Korean and 2 Americans that I'm training there to be preachers, and they're doing pretty good. They're doing the preaching now while I'm gone. So wherever we start a work, you have to use what you've got and develop that for the Lord and His glory. And that's basically the principle of mission work. And again, you have to understand at all times that what you're doing is of the utmost importance. And what you're doing is trying to save the most souls. That's the key. That's the purpose of everything. One of our preachers came up with the idea, said, well, why don't you use Zoom? I said, what's Zoom? And he explained it to him, and I said, well, it sounds pretty good. Let's talk about it. Well, I talked to Korean preachers about that. Some got excited. Yeah, okay, fine. Okay, so we said, yeah. Once I learned what it was, I thought, that's pretty good. So I said, yeah, let's do that. So we now, every week, have a Zoom program. And also we're using that to have a meeting with the preachers online. And so it's a gathering and speakers. They're choosing all of the people to do this now. More and more are coming on and being willing to be a speaker. Before it was kind of shy, I'm not that bad. But if you pressure them enough and give them enough confidence that they can do it and you really want them there, then they'll do it. And so we've worked that way with others encouraging them. You encourage them to encourage them. That it's working out, and that's working out too very well. And so I'm encouraged at times. Like I feel bad. I hear about some preacher that's left and gone. One time, many years ago, back in the '60s, we had a big military tent we had gotten. Thick canvas, oiled, kind of waxed tent, the old tents. And they're hot in the summertime. And Korea used to get, around 100 every summer. And we always have a lot of humidity because our weather comes over from China across the Yellow Sea, picks up all this moisture, and comes right on Seoul and dumps all this moisture. And so it's always hot and humid. So somebody told me, said, Brother Parsley, Brother Chase started a church over here. I said, yeah, I heard that. So I went over there to visit. And Brother Che had him his Bible in one hand, he had a handkerchief in the other hand. And he was in this tent with no windows. And he was preaching and a wiping. He was preaching and a wiping. And he had a black wool robe on, a graduation robe. I don't know where he got it, because they didn't have robes in, except the denominational church preachers, wore a robe back then. And so when the sermon was over, he deserved all the punishment he got from that. But anyway, when he got through, I asked him, I said, Brother Che, I said, what's this robe bit? He said, oh, Brother Parsley, so you have to have one of those to preach. I said, no. I said, I don't think, Paul had one. I said, I don't have one. And I said, I know nobody else in the Church of Christ I know has one. He said, oh, well, you don't understand. I said, you're a foreigner. And I said, well, okay, I am, and I agree with that, and I don't know everything. You're right about that. But I said, this kind of separates the preacher from the members. And I said, we're all the same. A preacher is just one who uses the talents been given to him, and it is his thing for the Lord, and everybody else is the same. And, well, you've got to have respect. And he went on, So anyway, that was that. Well, I heard a few, I forget how long it was after that. Somebody came to me, and one of the students said, Brother Parsley, did you hear about Brother Che? I said, no. I said, well, he went to the Pentecostal church. I said, well, I've learned one thing in life. You can't lose what you never had. And that's the way it is in life. We had taught him, and he knew better. All the missionaries at the time were there, and he knew better, but he still probably got a better salary over there is what the thing was. But, well, back then they were only getting about $17 a month for their family and all. Now that was the money was more valued back then, but still $17 wasn't much money. So, that's a lot better than this. Okay, all right. Wind it down. I got just a few hours left. But anyway, that was one of the problems. But let me tell you one more thing here, and I'll quit. Many years ago, we were starting congregations on the island of Jeju. We would start one every week, a new congregation every week. On Monday, we'd go to this place. We'd have Bible class. That's where I met my wife, by the way. And she was a student. And we went there. But we would go there Monday, and every night we would have a gospel meeting. And then at the end of the week, we would ask for, every night we had baptisms. In fact, we averaged baptizing 67 every week. And we had started church. Well, we left our best preacher there. We started knowing the next week. Second best preacher, third best preacher, fourth best preacher, fifth best preacher. You see? And so it ended up that it was a lot of, what do you say? A lot of putting out brush fires. We still have churches there, wonderful churches there, some of them. But this kind of thing happens. But you've got to learn to depend upon the Lord. That's the key. It's His work, and if it's not His work, He lets you know it's your work, not His. And I had this great idea one time. Oh, we're going to buy bicycles for him. Then one preacher can preach at 5 places. Oh, great. Everybody's happy to get a bicycle. We raised money in the state. Brotherhood was gracious. Send the money. Got it over, bought the bicycle. That's great. Went to figure it out how things were going. One guy said, well, I got a flat. This is country people now. I mean, this is real country people. He didn't know how to fix a flat tire. He had never seen anybody fix a flat tire, bicycle. And so somebody else says, well, mine broke. I forget what it was, a chain or something. Well, we'll get it fixed. Well, I had no way to get it to a shop to get it fixed. Somebody said, somebody stole mine. You know, and it went like this, And it didn't work. And I went, and just as always, I went and tried to evaluate. I was praying and praying, trying to find, Lord, why hasn't this worked? Why? I mean, it was a fantastic idea I had. Why didn't it work? And then it dawned on me. I think it was the Spirit within. Malcom, you never prayed about that work, whether it was the Lord's directing or not. So that taught me a lesson, nearly well enough. And whether time came up, and that too, I had failed to pray. We had a great idea, and I did it, and it flopped too. I'm glad, because now I've learned everything you make sure the Lord is His idea and His work and His ideas and His blessings. And He always gives you the blessings, and you always have success. So if you have any questions, anything about the work or anything, I can be happy to answer them for you. So just come to me and ask, and always be happy to be of service to you.
Thank you, Brother Malcom. Let's go ahead and close with a prayer, and we'll get ready for our worship service. Let's bow together. God, we're grateful and thankful for men like Malcom that have gone to other places, and they continue your work and spread your word into places that haven't heard about your Son and haven't read your word. We pray that you continue to bless him and Kwewa and the work that they're doing. We pray that you be with the congregations there as they grow, that they'll be strengthened in the faith and founded in the principles found in your word. Bless them and their efforts. Help us to remember that Christianity is not an American thing, but a worldwide thing that we ought to be sharing with everyone in the world. Bless us as we work with Malcom and others to help accomplish that goal, and be with us in our efforts.